Hello, podcast. Podcast 1-2. Podcast segment, Wheels of Steals. We're going to be stealing everything, and it looks like this next thing seems to have a tag on it called helium, which may go for helium, the Horn of Africa, past tense derivative. The prior people, while looking in the book of Ezekiel, which can go for white or it can mean fish, Athila is going to be one which is enfolds Athila, and we're going to put ATL Atlanta on ours, which has a tag on it by way of Ezekiel, which means white or fish. And so I guess what we're going to say then is that the accumulation of memory, which therefore goes to where you don't breathe, seems to be, in essence, an ancient mathematical order of, and we're going to throw some interesting parables in there. In order to throw nappy kite in there, we had to show that the 1 and an O were together, the O was black, and the 1 therefore was shapeless and had no dot. At it having no dot, you're going to get, let me see here, the eye of Musabar. And the eye of Musabar really is almost going to put Moses and Haran as an all-white integer back on the map. And so, but we wanted to get to Napaka. In order to do that, we had to show the equivalent equation on a mathematical bar. So, if Musabar means waves silently, then it's going to be the eye which shows the most amount of no dot existing on a one line shapeless. Now, if all these equations are correct, that the next memory thing for Miriam's thus far, which we want to say to steal everything and ask our neighbor, should be where we're at. That's where we're at. So the Bible, I think, concludes the fact that the slave people go here and go there and steal everything. Some of them go into the temples of Solomon and steal everything. The wisest of the West would give you lower back chemical camo nostrils breathe, 1 notch up to Ethiopia just to get there, which, by the way, is not one to withhold it. They're flossing light-skinned, black or green eyes, which are hard to get to until you use lower back chemical camo nostrils breathe, 1 notch up to Ethiopia. But Solomon's stuff, from our perspective, has a longer robe for Sheba. I've always tried to commit to the idea that there's a smaller and a larger group in dealing with the southern people. Okay, and so what we think is very interesting thus far is that we don't know how far that inner explosion goes. That which is old school science may say where you have no air, things rose up, I guess, and that if Nappy were to be added, and we've added all parts, 7s rise up in the Bible, and you had the difference in cast of east versus west. That is one who can take flight by lightness of air or by a hot air balloon, east versus west, and by absorbing air, Nappy became a vacuum cleaner if the west was applied and was a cleaner source. At that intention, these were all westbound, cannot be touched by like other eastbounders, and would simply float like helium at one point. So what is interesting about the book of Ezekiel, fish or white, Zaki, Chech, Czek, Vazeki, Zachariah, Zach, and then Athila is given for a enfolding portion of a flame. However, the sciences thus far may show ancient Egyptian with glass on top, that with no oxygen it turns black. 1, and the enfolding capability where we think you have zero gravity the most, where things are floating the most. Well, so that becomes an odd thing in memory, because at the point of, I'm going to show several. And now we're going into the monkeys. Monkeys right now look pretty interestingly compressed, nasally area. They look compressed, they look more inner chi at several varieties. And this is just a broad scope of where an idea like this, which seems to be explosive at one point, Miriam's is coming out of Egypt, they're becoming fat. And I'm going to suspect that all of this is dealt with by way of tree of knowledge of good and evil, which may be a tree of memory of good and evil at their time frame, in which the two simply in one hydrogen cell could not actually grow together, and you would have learned that simply doing a deed. But before that, let me see here. In the New Testament, don't touch new and old garments, which to me seems to get more revved up as it goes up. Okay, so this is podcast Astrology Ask Your Neighbor. Because really it dealt with fat and memory was growing, then you can do a deed if you had to in the midst of other people. This became a challenge. So let's just say that where you're not breathing at, we stayed happy as a baby, which is average. We can go Bible. And we are going to go where you don't breathe, which is a very Christian faceted portion. Veggie eaters, virgins. And if you're into Miriam's, which seems to be the medical world, the scab would be a part of a tree. Well, we think we still have what they have. We still think we have the division between atom and dust, between medical mixture, bones, flesh, I guess. And dust, I guess, would be more on other mixed virtues. We still think all of these are going to take a turn. Well, let's get to the most interesting part again, which is that we still think that several tribes around the world even know that the first baby growths were so important that they didn't breathe at all, for one. For two, if they were to charge up this simply happy baby and go to where they don't breathe, which is usually tightened up with Christian attributes, that they would start their first baby buds, or that algae, which resembles baby buds, would still give enough photon beams for Ask Your Neighbor's portion of fat-bringing skinnies. All the fat people will recognize fat. And the declensions of fat, at least, are at bone marrow. We want you here, they want me here, which crystallite still absorbs every kind of fat. Computing every kind of fat showed some kind of crystallite fat connection of astronomical proportions, meaning every single gigawatt still hasn't even been registered yet, and the fat started going blur on every side. That wasn't a good typical sign. It was about average for the time of Caleb being the general of Moses, the transformation time frames Miriam's. What could Haran stand for at this point? That's a good point. And when you switch Moses with Caleb, would you not get transformation of fat still within Haran, which is a mountains and peace? We don't know yet. And see, so these are the declension, the inclension inclines that they're talking about. Here we're going to take a moment to bring in Queen of Sheba's large caravan and say that green leaves were placed at the top before. They're still placed at the top now, which means wisdom is at the top of the tree still. And if they don't know anything but can sit there and still absorb via one of the three tree patterns that we have, which are virgins, veggies, and the scab, okay, that we should be warned that everything thus far is still on Bible note, still everything slave people, slave time frame in Babylon confusion, while going over notes. Do you know these people try to get mad because of booties in the Bible Free Will to YouTube? So there's nothing to get upset about. We have two cameras just to capture the moment. However, let's get back to the fat part. So we know if you had a frown and you replace that with a smile, that part would be fat and reconnects to your own fat. So we think it's one of two acidics, and that acidics on a microbial level can do this all the time. These fats and acidics go immediately and engulf into where you're not breathing. So where you're not breathing, they kind of charge towards in a very interesting way. And so we think they produce these stellies and these cellular portions which can orbit. They can actually orbit. At this point, we want to just ask our neighbor. Star Wars full effect. And the next question very easily is, where is the place? And we have this where we think you can see yourself outer body. Now that part was supposed to be stolen by birds, and it was stolen by birds. Because thus far you can go to any bird and not have, you wouldn't even get there. But you would say part of your bone marrow surely looks alien right now. And you would say it looks alien, and you would say, surely the birds in my neighborhood don't breathe. Surely certain tribes around the world don't breathe. Surely at the very baby time, stay happy as a baby. Don't overlap as a child, plus go connect where you don't breathe at. Thus far, and look for bone marrow, by the way, and you don't want to forget that spot because that is one electron. Then, of course, we want you here to want me here as a bone marrow kind of gig, which gives one electron and still absorbs every kind of fat. The fat consoles at this point are going blubbery and blurry because of the amount of different fat types recognized by some bone marrow crystallite spore. Pass the mic to Caleb again, General of Moses. Go to Marians, which means to transform, and go to Haran. And you will see an interesting entourage between the atoms of the beginning set, blood and dust, to make any mixture, bone and anything would have been there. But if you were to make a tree also, so what portions of virgins, veggies, and the scab didn't the other guys get? But that's the part on podcast here, American Plus. We're going to go with Christian belts right now. If you're studying, pray before conception, green eyes. Green leaves carry the concept of breathing, also changing into hydrogen. Them at the top. Sheba doesn't know any of these things right now. And you have to be careful about thieves. It's all in the Bible right now. I'm just saying, if you ask your neighbor who looks fat, they'll go off on fat. Because the average person has a lot to talk about fat, because fat has a lot to talk about. But black people have their own crystallite cell, and getting to that point, it deals with tooth, tines. Could go to science, doesn't even have to go to science, it can stay in Taine. And a lot of players will tell you right around this very clever area is where they started to recognize fat did not stop at, it stopped at baby growth rib area, which used to be, now it's called things which match, mix and match, and then you had things which did a full square and mixed and matched in a basic matrix of mix and match things which can be bundled and assorted together. But in a sense, fat has a lot to talk about. And so not going past an idea of, and plus adding the fact that old folks have a final growth stage where they feel like the body should be short. And buffaloes and llamas are both short. They feel like the body should be short, should actually be in association stacks until fully understood American history. To get to the more clever level, some of these still are just happy and going to where you're not breathing. Some of these are still algae fuzz, which we think are the very first teeny weeny buzzes where one doesn't even know who they are. At which point, I'm still trying to feel the fuzz from the surrounding areas, whether it's the birds or the people or whatever's going on. When you don't move too much, and it could be a simple concept as far as what's going on with the buzz and the fuzz out there. And you can kind of congeal with like the local people to know kind of what's going on. You can throw one index finger in the air and kind of classes in session. These days, robbing stuff seems to be so easy, especially for birds. And so when you get around, you want to take a look at Birdchest-Golopogus Islands and why we're allowed to put everything at the top. You put the candle at the top. Birdchest-Golopogus Islands has a heart attack inflatable chested, red-chested brother bird from the Water Bird Association and pops his own chest going against black, he then flies to India. So immediately you can go find the fattest person and just say fat got skinnied up by way of memory is growth. And they should go off, but the fat really should have by now its own schoolages itself. Could come from the Bible, and there's just so many ways of looking at that. Fat itself is smart. So our degree here with the flex that we're pushing over here, way over here with the green, is that we were actually able to associate several things and put biblical indicators there as well. Okay, so I hope that's crystal clear about all of that conjugation. It was podcast helium and Athila, because helium could be a label that somebody puts there, but you see labels all the time. El Salvador for Slav, really, if you look at Kiribati Islands going underwater, the all black Hawaii, Shem Hammer's Noah's Ark edition. Earth separates the fire from the water. Balaam and Balak's prophecies still have a nice indicator card at the surrounding area. What would be Noah's Ark at Kiribati Islands already went underwater, and are the people of El Salvador slaves. And so Balaam and Balak's prophecy really puts an indicator by the Bible, and you get a mysterious indicator card out there in geography at certain interesting dates. That's Balaam and Balak's prophecy for those. ATL for Athila from the book of Ezekiel, going to wait first or going to fish. Remember some of these atomic relevances going underwater. SeaWorld. Remember, walk before you fly. The biggest one is in Africa. Look up and see wings. And we're dealing with the bronze and iron kind of spectrum here. And so, but we're going for all white at the very end. And it seems that black does a carousel before you fly that we have on the map. We have 4 directions on the map. And you start to wear white. Oh, and you can go to Mexico, walk before you fly. You can go to Hawaii, the crumbs at the top, and walk before you fly. But guess what it is? It's Happy Black Deeds white, of course, going that way. So walk before you fly ends up wearing white. And if black doesn't care about you, such a confused people. But, well, they have indicators everywhere. Helium for that East African shula. Thila, ATL, Atlanta, number 2. Stealing stuff seems to be the ambience of no gravity, no air, and instant flight to places like that within what seems to be a traditional, nomadic, zodiac, old school Bible coming back this way into the future. Atlantic edition. Helium. Hydro 1. Okay, and so we're just going to basically just ask our neighbors to make sure we get there first. That's birds and parasitical birds, plants, and now people. Until next time, over and out. Here on their shoulders, clean a hoe. Peace. Try and stay up on another.